Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another edition of the program Serving the People. I'm your host, Mrs. Anissa Batiste. Let us start with a word of prayer. Loving Father in heaven, please bless me as I speak the truth to the people about our political and social affairs. And I pray especially for the people in government that they would take seriously the information concerning statistics on violence against women, and that they would do what is necessary to help to alleviate this problem. These mercies I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. And now, my dear viewers, let me remind you that if you wish to contact me, you may telephone me at 1784-528-1015, or you may write to me at servingthepeople.ab@gmail.com. I repeat the information at the end of the program for your assistance. This evening's topic is women leaders as agents of change. That's right, women leaders as agents of change. By now, many of you may have heard that recently I attended the first ever held Caribbean Regional Colloquium on women leaders as agents of change, held in Trinidad and Tobago on June 29th and 30th of this year, 2011, at the Hilton Hotel. I was personally invited out of the office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessor. By letter, I was invited to attend this colloquium, and it was a wonderful occasion. I would like to report certain things to you in this program and let you have an idea and a glimpse of what my experience was like. Sadly, and I say sadly because I really don't think we should have to be in this position, but one of the first things I need to make absolutely clear, my dear people, is that this invitation was sent to me directly from the office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. It was not a trip or a meeting that I attended with any thanks to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I have to make that clear because of the rumors and the propaganda that has been spread by ULP propagandists out there concerning my trip. I have a letter right here in front of me that came out of the Prime Minister's office, and it was addressed to me as Senator Anissa Batiste, New Democratic Party, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I'm going to read a piece of it for you, just so you would know the truth. It was dated 21st of June 2011, and it said, "Dear Senator Batiste," and the topic, "Invitation for a Women's Caribbean Regional Colloquium, Hilton Hotel, Port of Spain, June 29th to 30th, 2011. On behalf of Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessor, I am pleased to inform you that the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago will host a Caribbean Regional Colloquium on women leaders as agents of change at the Hilton Hotel, Port of Spain, on the 29th and 30th June 2011. This initiative is being organized in collaboration with UN Women, the Commonwealth Secretariat, the Organization of American States, and the Caribbean Institute of Women in Leadership, CIWIL. And then it went on to state what the objectives were and so on. And then the third paragraph said, "We would therefore like to extend to you an invitation to participate in this colloquium. As a prominent woman leader in the Caribbean, your participation would therefore be most welcome and appreciated. Please find attached a draft program of the regional colloquium for your consideration." And this letter, my dear people, was signed yours sincerely, Shem Balyo Singh. And Shem Balyo Singh is Special Advisor to the Prime Minister in Commonwealth and Parliamentary Affairs. And this is the letter that I received via my email address on about the 21st of June. And it was inviting me personally. So this had nothing to do with the government sending me. It was a personal invitation from the office of the Prime Minister. And later as we go along, I will tell you who actually recommended me for this meeting. I remain grateful to the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessor of Trinidad and Tobago for having invited me to this meeting. It was indeed an experience that I will not forget. And to give you an insight of what this meeting was about, it is my pleasure to present to you a slideshow, as it were, of photos that I had the opportunity of taking with the various women who attended the meeting, and women indeed who are agents of change and who are in the political and leadership sphere of their respective countries. The first photo on the screen is that of myself and the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessor, the first woman Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and this photo was taken at the welcome reception which Ms. Bissessor held in honor of the participants who were women leaders from around the Caribbean region and other women as well. So there you see us at the welcome reception. The second photograph is also at the welcome reception. This time it is with a lady called Marlene Kudre, and Marlene Kudre is currently the only woman mayor in Trinidad and Tobago. They have a local government system, and she is the only female mayor. She's the mayor of San Fernando, a city in the south of Trinidad, and that was me there with Miss Kudre. Interestingly, she said she had a grandmother who was from St. Vincent. The next photo you're seeing is of myself with Verna St. Rose Graves. She is the newest Minister of Gender, Youth and Child Development in Trinidad. And in fact, that's a new ministry that has been created by the Prime Minister. It was just created the day before we arrived to the Colloquium, because she did some cabinet reshuffling and she appointed a new Minister of Gender and Youth and Child Development. In the next photo, you would see me with former opposition leader of Barbados, Miss Mia Motley. That was on the first day of the colloquium. After she made a presentation, we were having a very interesting discussion, and that photo was taken during that discussion. Then you have myself with Miss Roberta Clark. She is the Regional Program Director of a body called UN Women, and that stands for United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women. The UN Women is one of the organizations that sponsored and cooperated with this meeting, and Miss Roberta Clark is the Program Director. And then you will see me in photos on the second day of the colloquium. The first one there is with Dr. Sylvia Annie. She is the Director of Social Transformation Programs in the division, that is the Director of the Social Transformation Program Division of the Commonwealth Secretariat, Dr. Sylvia Annie. Right after that, you will see me with a young lady from Belize. She is the Director of Women's Department in Belize, and her name is Miss Isilda Humes. Interestingly, Belize is one of the countries in the wider Caribbean region which has no female representation whatsoever in its parliament. And that was some discussion there. We also have a photo of myself with a specialist at the Inter-American Commission of Women with the OAS. Her name is Miss Yasmin Soliath Odlum, and she made a very important presentation on citizen security, which I will refer to later down in the program, where we look at some very important statistics that have to do with violence against women in the region. Pay careful attention to those when the time comes. The next photo is of myself with Dr. the Honorable Jackie Quinn Leandro. And Dr. Leandro is currently the only female parliamentarian in the Parliament of Antigua and Barbuda. She is Member of Parliament for East St. George in Antigua and Barbuda, and she is also the Minister of Education, Dr. Leandro. Following that, there's a photo of myself with Miss Sheila Rosso. Miss Sheila Rosso is the Director of the Gender Directorate in Antigua and Barbuda, and she's also one of the main sponsors and organizers of an organization called CIWIL, that stands for Caribbean Institute for Women in Leadership. Miss Sheila Rosso is also the Eastern Caribbean's nominee for the Women of Courage Award that the United States of America's Secretary of State Hillary Clinton gives each year. She was the Eastern Caribbean nominee for 2011, and she also received an award called the 2011 Hero Acting to End Modern Day Slavery Award. She received this award from U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, and let me take the opportunity to congratulate once again Ms. Sheila Rosa. Ms. Sheila Rosa was also the person who recommended me to attend this meeting from the Caribbean Institute of Women in Leadership, and I remain grateful to her. Thanks again, Ms. Rosa. And then after that, I have a photo with Miss Irene, that should be Senator Irene Sandiford Garner, who is currently a senator in the Parliament of Barbados, in the government, but she's also the Vice President of the Inter-American Commission of Women with the OAS, and that was at the final day of the meeting, but also at the final night, at the closing ceremony and tea that was hosted for us at the Prime Minister's residence in Trinidad. So that gives you an idea of the kind of experience I had in terms of the kind of women I was able to meet and to interact with. And indeed, they were precious moments for me as an upcoming young politician, and I was able to have very meaningful conversations with these women from around the Caribbean. I want you to note that this was a meeting that was very mature. There were women from both sides of the fences, so to speak, in their countries. There were women from opposition parties, there were women from governing parties or parties in government, but we all came together on issues that unite us, issues pertaining to gender equality, issues pertaining to wanting to see more women representation in politics and in leadership, to be able to push the issues that affect women and children around the Caribbean. And so it was a very meaningful meeting, and a very important one indeed for me personally. At this point, I want to share with you a brief video clip from U.S. Secretary of State Mrs. Hillary Rodham Clinton, where on the very first day at the opening ceremony, the participants in this meeting had a chance to look at this video message from Ms. Clinton, who endorsed our meeting and congratulated the Prime Minister of Trinidad for having this first ever Women Leaders as Agents of Change meeting in the Caribbean. Take a look at this short clip.
Hello, and welcome to this colloquium dedicated to empowering women as agents of change. I want to thank the Prime Minister for hosting this important forum. As Trinidad and Tobago's first female Prime Minister, she's a role model for women not only in her own country, but throughout the region and the world. In the United States this month, we celebrate the unique contributions by Americans of Caribbean descent. Caribbean American women have added in ways large, small, and everywhere to the story of America. And we've seen them act as agents of change in our own country. Throughout the Caribbean, we must ensure women are able to realize their own God-given potentials and allowed to contribute in every capacity as political leaders, entrepreneurs, social activists, and anything else. When women prosper, it doesn't just lift them up, it lifts up their families, communities, and even their countries. So as you come together to share experiences and challenges and to chart a course for achieving greater gender equality, please know that the United States stands with you. No society can prosper if half its citizens are left behind. And I can't wait to hear about your ideas and suggestions to how we empower more women throughout the Caribbean community. Thank you all very much.
Yes, my dear people, there you had it. The Secretary of State of the United States of America, who was a very good partner in the whole meeting, she congratulated us and gave us a brief message on the first day of the meeting. At this point, I would like to look at some of the issues that arose at the colloquium, and the most important of which has to do with some statistics I must share with you, my Vincentian brothers and sisters, concerning what is going on in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with respect to violence against women. Very important statistics. But before I go into these statistics for a minute or two, let me just tell you in brief that this meeting had a lot to do with encouraging more women into leadership positions in politics, in representative politics. It was acknowledged that even though the Caribbean countries had made certain strides over the year years in terms of having more women represented, it still had not reached the 30% quota that had been set in various agreements that had been signed by our Caribbean countries, that we would ensure that we have 30%, at least 30% representation of women in our parliaments and in our legislatures. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have 3 women in Parliament. Well, if you count the Attorney General, who is a member of Parliament for certain purposes, it would be 4. But in terms of elected members and appointed members, we have the elected member of Parliament for Maracaibo on the government side, Gerlin Miguel, as you know, and we also have 2 senators on the opposition side, myself and Miss Vinette Frederick. And therefore, out of 15, we basically have 3 members that are female, and so we do not reach the 30% quota. But we're not alone. There are a lot of other countries in the region who still have not reached that figure. In particular, Belize has no women at all in its parliament, and as I showed you before, Dr. Leandro in Antigua is the only female parliamentarian. So we still have some ways to go, and the meeting was discussing that a lot, because we see the importance of pushing and encouraging more women to be in leadership positions to ensure that there's that balance and there's gender equality, and that women can have their say and voice and actual impact in terms of affecting policy decisions and movements in the future towards addressing the issues that affect women and children, gender issues. And these are very important, because when you consider that it is said that 50% of the Caribbean is made up of women, in other words, women make up half our population, then we must have that equality when it comes to women's voices being heard, etc. And this meeting had a lot to do with encouraging this kind of representation. There's a particular organization, CWAIL, I mentioned it. I'll say something about it towards the end, because it has a lot to do with training and encouraging women to get into these positions, which is a very noble and admirable work that CWAIL is engaged in. But let me get straight into those statistics, because they're so important. One of the presentations made at the meeting came from a lady called Miss Yasmin Odlum, and she made a presentation on gender, violence, and security in the Caribbean. She is from the Inter-American Commission of Women of the OAS. And in her presentation, she spoke about the issue of homicides, murders against women, and other violent acts against women, which affect women's participation in society and at the end in governance and so on. And I need to show you some of these statistics as they pertain to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because they are very important. I want to turn your attention for a moment to this screen, and I want to show you right here, the first slide I want to look at. It says OES statistics, female homicide. So it has to do with murders against women. And if you look straight down, you will observe St. Vincent is highlighted in a brighter pink. We are told, for example, that over the period 2000 to 2010, you have Antigua and Barbuda recording 8 women being killed over a 10-year period. In the case of Dominica, 11 women. In the case of Grenada, 7 women were killed over a 10-year period. In the case of St. Kitts Nevis, 8 women. In the case of St. Lucia, 17 women were killed over a 10-year period. But when you look at St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are told 43 female homicides took place. And there's a note below here that tells us, for example, and let me just scroll down this page a little bit to make sure you can see it. There's a note below that says, oops, sorry about that, let me go back up one. It says SVG in the time period under review had more female homicides, 43, than total for the other countries combined, 42. And the source of this information, by the way, is the gender department of the respective countries. So this report is not lying on us. The Inter-American Commission of Women specialist, Miss Yasmin Odlum, received her statistics from the various gender departments in the various countries represented here. Note, my dear people, that over the 10-year period, 43 of our women were murdered. Okay, violence against women. a total of 43. But when you compare with the other OECS countries, you observe that when you add up each country's figure, it comes up to 42. So we had a figure that was one above the total of all the other countries. That speaks volumes for us. It doesn't speak well for St. Vincent and the Grenadines at all. I want to take you to slide number 33. Slide number 33. And it gives you OECS statistics on sex crimes versus women over the last 10 years, 2000 to 2011. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the biggest figure for the amount of rapes reported. Over that 10-year period, St. Vincent and the Grenadines reports 802 rapes. Divide that by 10, and that tells you that for every year, we had at least 80 women raped. Reported, so it could be more, because this is only what is reported. My dear people, this is serious, and we have the biggest figure. The next biggest figure after that is from St. Lucia, which is 587. But in the case of St. Vincent, it's 802 rapes reported, the highest in the OECS over the last 10-year period. And there's one more thing I want to show you in the time that we have, and it's on this chart, and it has to do with those same rape reports and so on. This is the original chart where the figures were produced for the specialists who reported on it at the meeting. You could imagine my surprise sitting there and looking at these figures as a Vincentian, as the only person from St. Vincent at the meeting. And these figures were given to her by our Gender Affairs Department. And she has the figures outlined for each year. And indeed, when I added up, I saw that the total number of women deaths was 43. And the total number of reported rapes was in fact 802. But there's something I want to point out that I noticed. There's another column here called charges or convictions for rape. So while you get to see the number of reported rapes over the 10-year period, you get to know how many of those reports received charges or convictions. And when I added it up, it only came up to 255. In other words, over 10 years, 255 of the rapes reported, of the 802 rapes reported, only 255 got charges or convictions. And that tells me that is just about 30%, 30 to 31% of the number of reported rapes really got some sort of final decision in the courts over 10 years. That is significant. That doesn't speak well for the justice system. It doesn't speak well for how we are dealing with the situation, because if we have 802 rapes over 10 years and only 255 of them get convictions or charges, it means there's still a lot that are outstanding. And again, I did not make up these figures, neither did the New Democratic Party. These are figures presented in a report at this regional colloquium by the specialist of the OAS Inter-American Commission on Women, Miss Yasmin Odlum. They are damning statistics on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They are statistics that ought to call for the serious attention of the Gender Affairs Department, the Police Department, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and something definitely has to be done with respect to these situations. When you look at the state of the economy over the years, over the last 10 years, where we ran big deficits and we had a lot of cuts in social programs, and we are afraid that enough spending did not take place in the kind of programs that are needed to address the problems related to these ills, these social ills, we recognize that a lot of the increases took place during the years when the economy was hit hardest. My dear people, we have to look into these things because they affect us. But as we end up for the last 2 minutes or so, I want you to take a quick look at some closing remarks from the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad, Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar. Listen to these closing remarks by Ms. Bissessar.
As accomplished women, we are the thoughts and dreams of our mothers and grandmothers embodied and made alive. It is their voices that we hear in our heads and hearts, urging us on as we walk the challenging road to leadership, standing confidently and proudly beside our male colleagues to enable the process of national development, which benefits all our citizens equally with regard to gender. Over the past 2 days, I know that much was said on the issues of the empowerment of women, transformational leadership, and what that means for Caribbean women, Caribbean political culture, and the way forward for our countries. I'm aware that there were repeated calls for more women to enter the political arena, for as we know, effective political representation by women is the key to changing the dynamics of our current Caribbean political and socio-economic reality. But if I may add, as women, those of us who have been or who are now in the corridors of power must build and encourage the political will within our women, and certainly this would have been highlighted during your colloquium. And I say that political will, that call to leadership, must be nurtured in women of all social strata, representing the full diversity of women, reflecting ethnic groups, age, socioeconomic status, abilities, rural, urban location. It is only in this way we can achieve that critical mass of women to enable meaningful change. And so whilst we, and many of us, have been involved in gender issues for quite a while and empowering of women, I would want to suggest that we need to go further out to reach across to those in rural areas, those from a different socioeconomic group. It cannot just be that we are the few educated ones and we know it all. We need to reach out to them and bring them into this networking. That is how we will get critical mass. In this regard, I want to endorse the work of one of the partners of this colloquium, in particular, the Caribbean Institute for Women Leadership, for its work in building capacity among Caribbean women.
Yes, my dear people, and I too want to commend CIWIL, the Caribbean Institute for Women in Leadership, for their support that they granted to this colloquium, because I think CIWIL is playing a very important role in the Caribbean when it comes to encouraging women in leadership. I am an example because it was CIWIL who recommended me through Ms. Sheila Rosso to attend this meeting. And when I look at CIWIL's brochure, Caribbean Institute for Women in Leadership, and they have their website as well, and you can, their website is www.ciwil.org. When I look at this brochure, they tell you some of the areas in which they offer training, and they offer training to women who want to contest elections. They do things like supporting women's campaigns, supporting you in terms of teaching you about campaign funding and financing. And it's really excellent work because they're actually holding your hand and guiding you as a woman in politics, knowing how challenging it is generally. One might say it is a man's world, but they are willing to help you through it to ensure that more women get involved in politics and in leadership in their respective countries in the Caribbean. Hats off to CIWIL and the other organizers. Thank you once again, Ms. Bessessa in Trinidad. May God bless St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My dear people, we have to do something about these statistics, and we have to definitely look out for more for our women folk and our children and our men as well, who together form our families and our societies. Until next program, remember, write to me, servingthepeople.ab@gmail.com, or call 528-1015. God bless you. Bye-bye.